and or mark through it, and then whatever they would a couple times add some words or whatnot. They would change it up, and we would then copy it the way they wanted it, and we thought they would send them all, but they were really just preparing them for this group of meeting of foreign diplomats or whatever group it was, and they were going to use them as propaganda of their good treatment and treating us well in accordance with the Geneva Agreements. And they didn't.
But even if they just gotten identified by whatever means, that was a plus.
Right, just to know where they were and that they were alive, because
Exactly.
from what you had been told, he was in the fireball and not alive, so that was a good way to just get the name out.
And if nothing else, if the diplomat had gotten their name out, it was positive. So, of course, a lot of the diplomats that got to go in there were sympathetic to the Vietnamese. So, it just happened that this English diplomat was a good guy.
A woman.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. You said he was a woman.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for the record, it was just the English diplomat that was able to take his letter and get it to you. Can you talk a little bit about that? I know we talked about it last night, but just so we can...
Well, they wrote those letters in June, and I got it in August. And like I said, the postmaster here called and said, "Miss Harris, I'm not sure, but I think I have a letter for you from your husband." And then he said, "It's just addressed Miss Louise Harris, Tupelo, Mississippi." And one of the later shoot downs had told Smitty that I'd come to Tupelo. That made good sense to him because he knew Janice and Dick were here. And he, that same fella,
It was Larry Garino.
Larry Garino, who was in a different squadron from us, told Smitty he knew we had 2 little girls. He wasn't certain what the sex of our baby was. But he thought since we had 2 little girls, it'd be nice if we had a little boy. So he told Smitty that Lyle was a little boy.
This was through our camp.
Really? That's how you got the news of of your baby, was through the tap code.
And
a year or so later, I happened to be in the same camp with Larry and got communication with him. By that time, I had 6 squadron mates all up there, and
they
had gotten
confirmed
information.
that it was a boy.
Larry fessed up. He said, "Smitty, I didn't know if it was a little boy or a little girl, but I thought you would like a little boy."
That's true.
And what was going through your head when you found that out? I mean, certainly you knew she was about to have the baby.
Yes.
So.
He was thrilled to death with the news, and then
absolutely.
he found out that Larry wasn't even really sure. But by then he'd had it confirmed by Robbie Reisner and others, who'd actually had their hands on Lyle. But anyway, I thought that was so funny that Larry thought, well, they have 2 little girls, it'd be nice if you had a little boy.
Unfortunately, that worked out.
No kidding.
But anyway, it was, wonderful to actually have my hands on something that he had his hands on. And while I knew it read strangely, I didn't care. He had written it, and he was alive, and that confirmed that. And it had relevance to me because he said things that were familiar, even though it was still in strange language. I knew he was alive and that his mind was operating okay. And I could tell his mother and dad that he was alive. I could read it to the children. They could touch it. So that was meaningful to them. And it was just wonderful. I just answered all my prayers and filled all my boxes. And and then I could confirm to the Pentagon. And even though they changed it to detained by hostile forces, thank you, Lyndon Baines, it made a difference in our lives. It just validated his status, and I'd known it all along that he was alive, but it gave validation to it, and it made a difference in the way he was perceived, and it was wonderful. But the main thing is to touch something that he had touched was just incredible, and it took them a while to figure out how that letter had gotten out, but somewhere through channels they found out that was how the letter had gotten out. And so anyway, I was thrilled.
So you mentioned they changed the status to detained, and I think from listening to some previous interviews that you've done, they certainly did not give you POW status. They called you war criminals.
Criminals before. We weren't prisoners before.
Yes.
And they got quite angry if you said anything about the Geneva Convention, which they signed, or about POW status, or anything that would make them try to believe that they had an obligation to treat us right. It would make them very angry, so we didn't do that. Because we knew when they got very angry what ensued.
Can you talk about a normal day? Because you were there for almost 8 years.
And there were lots of those, because you hear about torture and writing letters and things, but day by day by day there was a lot of boredom. And what broke that up was our communication and efforts, and our efforts to clear looking under the door and things for others to communicate. And not just the tap code. We had a number of different ways. And one of the most effective was voice, right through a wall, concrete wall this thick. We found out that we could take our tin cup and wrap our cotton blanket around our head to muffle the sound, and do it during siesta time, and put the cup solid against the wall and speak very loudly into it. And the person on the other side could take his tin cup and put it exactly opposite. We figured it out, and listen and hear voice right through that wall.
Wow.
But it took a lot of people clearing to make sure that the guards were not close by, because they would hear us talking, and that was bad. So there were lots of ways that we had our own mute code. It went A, B, there it is, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, and so on, all with one hand, because a lot of times you were hanging on to a window to get up high enough that they could see across to another cell block or something. And that was very fast and totally silent. And when we were at the, all 350 roughly of us were at the Hanoi Hilton after the Sante raid. All the senior officers, 7 or 8 of them, were in one cell together. And they put together lots of directions, code of conduct, how we were to respond, and everything. And it went through about 4 rooms. When it finally came to our big cell, we had someone who was able to see across to another cell and receive